The scream hit before the sparks even died. "You built what on our property?" I lifted my welding mask, sweat still steaming off the steel beam I'd been shaping all morning. That's when I saw her, Madeline Shore, president of the Maple Ridge Preserve HOA, marching toward me like she owned every tree in sight. Two security guards trailed behind her, confused but trying to look important. "This is private land," I said. She handed me a document anyway, some new amendment claiming my driveway, my creek, even my bridge, belonged to her community. But the real shock came hours later when I caught them coming back. When you grow up on land that has your family's fingerprints pressed into every fence post and creek bend, you develop a certain tolerance for nonsense. But even with all my years out here, 49 acres of mixed pine and hardwood in northern Georgia, I wasn't prepared for an HOA president marching onto my property like a sheriff with a shiny new badge. My name's Daniel Harper, and for the last 3 decades I've made a living welding steel for people who actually need it. Farmers, contractors, county crews who don't mind a man with calloused hands and straight answers. My shop sits about 50 yards from the house, a renovated barn my grandfather built long before HOAs existed. He bought this land in 1954, after returning from the Korean War, cleared it with a borrowed tractor, and always said, "Land's the one thing nobody can fake owning." Turns out he never met an HOA president. The trouble really began the month before the confrontation. A storm had taken out the old wooden bridge that crossed our creek, the same one my grandfather built and my father repaired twice. I'd been putting off replacing it, but when the last heavy rain washed out half the span, I didn't have much choice. Without a bridge, the only way in or out required a 10-minute detour through a rutted county service road that looked like it had been forgotten since the Carter administration. So the next morning I hauled out my tools, burned through 3 rods, and laid the foundation for a proper steel bridge, 5 feet across concrete, decking solid enough to outlive me. I filed the necessary notice with the county, got a quick green light from the engineering office, and started building. Life was simple again. Quiet mornings, steel humming under heat, the creek running its usual rhythm, at least until Madeline Shore arrived. I'd heard her name once or twice at the feed store, the new HOA president from the subdivision down the hill, the one who insisted the neighborhood Facebook page use professional tone and consistent branding. People joked she ran the HOA like a startup. I didn't think much of it. Their development had nothing to do with me. My land was older than all their houses put together. Turns out she thought differently. A week before the confrontation, I noticed a few unfamiliar SUVs creeping down my driveway, slow enough to make the hair on my arms stand up. I'd step outside and they'd turn around pretending they were lost. I chalked it up to GPS confusion, until the day Madeline confronted me with her clipboard and store-bought authority. That night, after her fake amendment and her smug smile, I walked back into my house and pulled out the old metal lockbox under the bed. Inside was everything that mattered: my grandfather's deed from 1954, the updated survey from 1998, the easement records filed with the county. Everything clean, notarized, indisputable. One glance at those documents, and I knew whatever Madeline was trying to pull, she had no legal ground to stand on. I called my daughter Emily Harper, a civil litigation attorney in Atlanta who inherited her mother's brains and my stubborn streak. I sent her photos of the so-called amendment the HOA president had waved in my face. 10 minutes later, she called back, her voice sharp enough to cut gravel. "Dad, that document isn't worth the paper it's printed on. It's not recorded anywhere. And HOAs can't magically annex land because they feel like it. Don't sign a thing. I'll come down this weekend." Her certainty steadied me, but what really stuck with me wasn't the bogus amendment or the sudden interest in my land. It was the look in Madeline's eyes when she stared at my bridge. Not curious, not annoyed, entitled. Like she was already imagining her HOA logo bolted onto it. I didn't know how far she'd go, but as the October wind picked up and night settled across the creek, I had a sinking feeling this wasn't the end of it. It was just the beginning. The first sign things were about to get worse came at sunrise. I'd barely tied my boots when an awful grinding noise rolled through the woods, metal against metal, heavy and intentional. When I stepped outside, my stomach dropped. A brand new 8-foot steel security gate stood across my road. Not a farmer's gate, not something temporary. A full HOA Fortress keypad, motion lights, reinforced posts sunk into fresh concrete, still wet enough to shine in the morning light. Right there, 30 feet inside my property line. A white sign swung from the bars: Maple Ridge Preserve, Hoa Privet Access. No trespassing. I touched the post. My fingers came back dusty with uncured concrete. That's when I heard the rumble of tires. A black SUV rolled up on the opposite side of the gate, and out stepped Madeline Shore, dressed for a board meeting, not a backroad standoff. Her 2 security guards climbed out behind her, shifting awkwardly. She smiled like she was greeting a neighbor at a bake sale. "Good morning, Mr. Harper. I trust you've noticed our new security installation." "My property," I said. "My road. My bridge. Remove it." She slid a laminated sheet through the bars. "Per HOA Amendment 7F, all community access points must meet safety requirements. You'll receive your access code once your outstanding fees are paid." What fees, I asked, though I already knew the answer wouldn't be good. Road maintenance, $250. Unauthorized construction, $1,500. That bridge is on land that's been in my family for 70 years. Her smile thinned. "Our amendment extends jurisdiction to adjacent access points. This road meets that criteria." "No," I said, calm but cold. "It doesn't. Legally or otherwise." "We'll let the board decide," she replied, turning on her heel, like a queen dismissing a subject. The younger guard lingered. "Sir, we don't think this is right." "Then ask who's telling you to do it," I said. He didn't answer. Emily arrived before noon, practically flying out of her car with a laptop under her arm. "Dad, don't touch that gate, and don't say anything to her without me present." She took pictures of everything: concrete posts, lock mechanism, boundary markers. She paced like an investigator marking a crime scene. Inside, we spread my deed and survey map across the table. She traced the easement line with her finger and let out a slow, controlled breath. "This isn't overreach," she said. "This is calculated." Calculated felt like an understatement. 3 days later, the second blow landed. A neighbor called urging me to look at Facebook right now. On the Maple Ridge Preserve page, the HOA had posted a community safety warning featuring photos of my bridge taken at angles that made it look warped and unstable. The caption read, "Unauthorized structure built without permits. Potential threat to community safety." Hundreds of reactions. Dozens of comments. People who had never spoken to me suddenly decided I was a reckless old man endangering property values. Emily called within minutes. "Don't comment," she warned. "Don't defend yourself. They want to drag you into a public fight so they can spin it." Staying silent didn't stop the fallout. At the hardware store, folks avoided eye contact. At the diner, conversations died when I walked in. All because one HOA post suggested I was a menace. Rumors spread faster than wildfire in a dry county. Then came the invitation. A formal notice slid into my mailbox, hand-delivered emergency HOA meeting attendance requested regarding ongoing violations. I wasn't a member, never had been. But concerned adjacent property owners were encouraged to attend, meaning me. Emily insisted we go. The community center was already packed, nearly 60 residents squeezed into folding chairs. A projector glowed at the front like a spotlight awaiting its victim. Madeline stood beside the screen, dressed sharp, expression polished. "Let's begin," she said. She clicked the remote. My bridge appeared on the projector, cropped, darkened, exaggerated. She launched into a speech about unauthorized construction safety hazards and community standards. She talked like a prosecutor, her voice steady, her language carefully crafted to paint me as irresponsible. People nodded along. When she opened the floor for questions, a woman asked, "Why didn't he just get the proper permits?" Madeline sighed like she'd carried the burden of my incompetence for years. "Unfortunately, some individuals believe the rules don't apply to them." That was it. I stood. "This land is mine, recorded since 1954. My bridge was inspected and approved by the county. Your HOA has no jurisdiction here." Some people shifted uncertain. Others glared at me. Madeline remained calm. "Mr. Harper, the amendment clearly extends HOA oversight to this access point. Your refusal to cooperate proves our concern." When the meeting ended, folks filed out, avoiding my eyes. A woman muttered, "He just doesn't respect the community." Strangers now looked at me like I was a pariah. It wasn't anger that hit me hardest, it was isolation. In the town I'd lived in my whole life. Then the phone rang. A frail voice. "Mr. Harper, this is Linda Merrill. I used to be the treasurer of the HOA before she pushed me out." My heart thumped. "I know what she's doing to you," she whispered. "She did it to me. I have documents, emails, financial records. Things she never wanted anyone to see." I didn't speak. Linda continued, voice trembling but resolute. "She's been abusing her position for years. And your property, it's not about safety. It's about money. Please, meet me. I'm ready to talk." I hung up slowly, staring at the dark window. For the first time, the situation snapped into focus. This wasn't just harassment. It wasn't just an HOA gone wild. It was corruption. And the woman running it had finally pushed the wrong person. Linda chose a diner 30 minutes outside town, somewhere she'd never think to look, she whispered. When Emily and I walked in, Linda was already tucked into the back booth, a canvas tote at her feet, and 2 hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee. She didn't waste time. "Madeline's been abusing that HOA for years," she said, eyes darting around the room. "The security company, her husband owns it, half the invoices are fake, and the amendment she showed you never voted on. She printed it herself." Emily leaned forward. "Do you have proof?" Linda slid a USB drive across the table, then lifted the canvas tote, revealing a 3-inch binder stuffed with documents. Emails, statements, meeting notes, everything she never expected anyone to see. We spent nearly an hour going through the highlights, unapproved expenditures, altered minutes, jurisdiction maps that had been redrawn without a vote, and a pattern of targeting anyone who questioned her. By the time we left, the fight felt much bigger than my bridge. It felt criminal. Emily acted fast. Within 2 days, our attorney filed an emergency injunction with the county court, requesting immediate removal of the gate and alleging trespass, fraud, and unlawful interference with my property rights. The hearing was set for Tuesday at 9 a.m. When we arrived that morning, the courtroom was surprisingly packed. Maple Ridge residents, curious onlookers, even a local reporter. Linda sat quietly in the second row, clutching her purse like a shield. Madeline entered moments later with an expensive attorney and an expression carved from stone. For the first time, she didn't look untouchable. She looked cornered. The judge, a direct, no-nonsense woman in her 50s, called the hearing to order. Our attorney began with the basics: my deed from 1954, the survey lines, the HOA's original jurisdiction map, explicitly excluding my property. He showed photos of the gate, fresh concrete keypad lock, and the HOA's Facebook post, labeling my bridge a hazard. Then the judge turned to the HOA's attorney. "Your response." The lawyer launched into a polished speech about community safety, good faith oversight, and the need to prevent liability. It sounded rehearsed and hollow. The judge cut through it fast. "Show me proof your amendment was legally recorded with the county," she said. Silence. "Show me documentation granting jurisdiction over Mr. Harper's land." More silence. The judge's eyebrow lifted. Never a good sign. Our attorney stood again. "Your Honor, we have additional evidence." He plugged in the USB drive. An email filled the courtroom screen. "The Harper property is an ideal test case. He's older and unlikely to fight." A wave of shocked murmurs washed through the crowd. Another email appeared, outlining plans to expand HOA jurisdiction to generate new revenue. Then, financial reports showing thousands paid to a security company owned by Madeline's husband. All approved without competitive bidding. Madeline's lawyer tried to object. The judge raised a hand. "Sit down. I want to hear from Miss Shore." Madeline stood face-tight, hands shaking. "Your Honor, these emails are being misinterpreted. We were simply exploring ways to support community growth." "And the payments to your husband's company?" the judge interrupted. Madeline swallowed. "We evaluated." "Show me the bids," the judge said. She couldn't. The judge leaned back, folded her hands, and delivered her ruling like a hammer. "I'm granting the injunction. The HOA has no legal authority over Mr. Harper's property. The gate was installed unlawfully and must be removed within 48 hours. Additionally, due to substantial evidence of financial misconduct, I am ordering a full, independent audit of HOA finances and referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal investigation." Whispers erupted. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "I knew it." The judge hit her gavel. "We're adjourned." Emily exhaled for the first time in an hour. Linda wiped tears from her eyes. As Madeline hurried out of the courtroom, avoiding every face in the room, the weight of months of intimidation finally cracked and fell away. Justice had stepped in, and this time it had receipts. They removed the gate on a cool Thursday morning. A crew sent by the newly restructured HOA, none of the familiar security guards, none of Madeline's people, arrived with an angle grinder, a small excavator, and expressions that said they wanted no part in what had happened before. The scream hit before the sparks even died. "You built what on our property?" I lifted my welding mask, sweat still steaming off the steel beam I'd been shaping all morning. That's when I saw her, Madeline Shore, president of the Maple Ridge Preserve HOA, marching toward me like she owned every tree in sight. 2 security guards trailed behind her, confused but trying to look important. "This is private land," I said. By noon, every trace of the structure was gone except for disturbed earth and the memory of what it represented. Emily walked out from the house and stood beside me, arms crossed. "That sound," she said quietly, watching the workers load the metal onto a flatbed, "should have happened months ago." "Better late than never," I answered. 2 weeks later, the district attorney filed formal charges against Madeline: embezzlement, fraud, abuse of fiduciary duty. Her husband faced charges too, operating a shell security company, and receiving HOA funds through bogus contracts. The case drew attention throughout the county. It turned out Maple Ridge wasn't the only neighborhood she had tried to expand jurisdiction over. Ours was simply the first to push back. At her plea hearing, she didn't look like the sharp, polished HOA president who had marched onto my land with a clipboard and a smile. She looked small, tired, and very alone. The judge sentenced her to 2 years of probation, community service, and restitution payments. Her husband's business was dissolved. When reporters asked for comment, I kept it simple. Accountability matters. That's all. Emily told me later that my answer annoyed her lawyer friends. They wanted something rousing, quotable. But that wasn't my style. Justice doesn't need pretty speeches. It needs evidence, patience, and people willing to stand their ground. Life returned to normal slowly, the way snow melts quietly and without ceremony. Neighbors who had avoided me now waved over their mailboxes. The hardware store owner apologized one morning while bagging screws and paint thinner. "We should have come to you directly," he said, eyes downcast. We believed her because, I guess it was easier. I told him the truth. People make mistakes. What matters is whether they fix them. The new HOA board led by Linda kept their promise to reform everything. Transparent budgets, open meetings, real oversight. They even sent me a formal letter acknowledging the harm done and thanking me for protecting the integrity of the community. I filed it in a drawer. It wasn't forgiveness I needed, it was closure. Spring arrived early that year, coating the pines in yellow dust and filling the creek with snowmelt. One afternoon, Emily sat with me on the porch as we watched the water rush under the bridge I'd built. "You ever think about naming the road?" she asked. I looked at the old dirt path cutting through the trees. My grandfather's path, my father's path, now mine. Maybe it was time. So I spent a week in my workshop shaping a steel sign from scrap plate and welding the letters by hand. Harper's Crossing Est. 1954. Emily helped me mount it at the entrance, steadying the post while I set it in concrete. When the sun hit the steel just right, the letters gleamed like they'd always been there. "Grandpa would like this," she said softly. He'd say it took me long enough, I joked. But deep down I felt something shift. The path wasn't just a road anymore. It was a reminder, a mark of what had been fought for and protected. A week later, as I shoveled fresh gravel across the filled-in holes where the gate once stood, a car slowed near the edge of my driveway. A neighbor I barely knew stepped out, hands in his pockets. "I heard what you did," he said. "Standing up like that? Most folks wouldn't have." "I didn't do anything special," I replied. "Just told the truth." He shook his head. Sometimes that's the hardest thing. He left me with that thought, and I stood there a moment listening to the creek and the wind in the pines. For the first time in months I felt at ease. The land was quiet again. The road was open. The bridge stood strong, and the shadows cast by someone else's authority had finally lifted. I walked to the middle of my bridge, ran my hand along the steel rail, and looked down at the water moving steadily under my boots. Land remembers. So does justice. And so does a man who refuses to yield what's rightfully his. Some fights you win not because you're loud, but because you're right, and that's enough.